Great, welcome to Module 2, and today we're going to look at different learning theories, starting with social cognitive theory, first introduced by Alfred Bandura. And what was significant about him is that he became the bridge from behaviorism to different forms of cognitivism, because up until his time, we all thought people learn by rewards and punishments, and he was the first one to say we can also learn by modeling. So you've already watched the videos showing some of the background of his work, and here then is some of the assumptions. People learn by observing others. Learning is an internal process that may or may not result in behavior change. We direct behavior towards a particular goal, which eventually becomes self-regulated, and reinforcement and punishment have indirect rather than direct effects on learning and behavior. And remember, this is significant because up until this time, we didn't understand that modeling was important, and he indicated that indeed it is hugely significant in our learning process, and really became the bridge to constructivism, which we'll talk about next. So he looked at three reciprocal pieces of determinism. In other words, one affected the other, Models provide instruction and feedback. Our goals and our sense of self-efficacy, attributions and regulation come into play, and that leads to goal setting, motivation, and learning. So what does this mean? What's a model? A model is someone who we can look to, or something that we are going to pattern our behavior after. So it's tricky, I think, as educators especially, because we are such huge models. When kids see us come to our class every day drinking a Coke or drinking our coffee, they see that we are reliant on these things, and that's something they start modeling. Or if they see, like when I was teaching, if I was reading during silent reading time, and if someone tried to talk to me, I'd be like, no, not now, I'm reading. That let them know that the message is reading is important to me, and we need to be quiet now and read. And even if I were doing something little like taking attendance or filling out a form, it was significantly different than if I was really just sitting there still and reading. So an effective model can be positive or negative, and that's the challenge. We always talk about peer pressure, and we want to be careful who we hang out with, because sometimes our kids can model poor behaviors or behaviors maybe that we wouldn't want for them as opposed to ones that we do. So an individual who lives a behavior for someone else that ideally we'd like good role models, people who are live in their lives, teachers, parents, siblings, peers, but also symbolic models, sometimes actors, and that's why people get so upset, I think, when actors or performers or athletes show up in the headlines as using drugs or as doing something illegal or immoral or unethical. People get upset because they look up to these people and feel let down when these people make bad choices, according to our ideals of choices. So models can be real people, parents, or historical figures like Nelson Mandela. They can also be characters like Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, the world's awesomest father, or character from Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. So we can be impacted by our observational behavior. Somebody does something, we see them do it. For example, when I was learning to ride a motorcycle, I rode behind my companion and watched how he handled his bike, watched as we were going around curves and how he dealt with it, became aware of, was he going slow, was he going fast, and definitely modeled my behavior after him, which helped me become a much better rider much more quickly. It can facilitate response. So we can, if we get a positive response to our behavior, then we might enact it more often. It can also inhibit a response. A student was telling me that his mother was learning English, and his brothers and sisters laughed at her so much that she stopped trying to learn English because she felt put down by the quality of her English. And finally, disinhibition, where we do something more frequently after seeing the model exhibit the behavior without consequences. So like in that Bobo doll experiment, the kids got to see one experiments where people were yelled at after doing it. They got to see another time where people didn't. And sometimes if they don't think anything's going to happen, they will continue it again. And I think we can see examples of this with driving. Because it's rare that you get a ticket, you might speed more often than you should because you don't think it's likely that you'll be punished for that. So obviously, effective models typically demonstrate competence, often have prestige and power, and have behavior appropriate to our own situation. So I may not look up to someone that is doing something I don't care about at all or don't ever imagine that I could do. But I would look to someone that I felt like, okay, now that's a person that I can relate to and someone I want to emulate. So the modeling process begins with attention, where I first pay attention to what they're doing and notice it. Then I retain that behavior or remember it. I'm able to reproduce it, and I'm motivated to do so. Self-regulation includes setting standards and goals for ourselves and engaging in behaviors that lead to the accomplishment of those goals. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about self-efficacy. This is the belief that we are capable of actually attaining the particular goal. And I like this little image down here. People who perceive that they have a sense of self-efficacy, efficacy facilitates setting goals, investing effort, persistence in the face of barriers, and recovery from setbacks. So more people who have a sense that they can do it are more likely to attempt it and overcome challenges. One of the earliest authors about the power of self-esteem is Nathaniel Branden, and this is an excellent book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. I highly recommend it. But he talks about self-efficacy here in terms of the confidence and the sense of myself to be able to do what's set in front of me. And I think it's important as educators that we give our students opportunities to do things that they believe they're capable of. It doesn't mean they need to be easy. It just means to be that they feel like they can attain it, because if it looks too overwhelming, if you give me War and Peace and I'm a struggling 10th grader reader, I don't have the sense of efficacy to be able to tackle that book, and I'm not going to even try. So we want to make sure we give kids attainable goals that they can reach. So without self-efficacy, it's going to be very hard, almost impossible to do something. And with it, of course, we can conquer worlds. So in the classroom, we want to make sure that we are modeling what we want students to do and how to do that. We want to chunk material and assignments so they can be successful, help them set achievable goals, and this is going to be different for different children. And sometimes kids are going to ask, well, it's not fair. How come I have to do this when all he has to do is this? And so you need to explain about differentiation and how your level is going to be here. If I asked you to only do this, that wouldn't be appropriate for you. So we also want to give students opportunities to regulate their own behavior and give them a chance to reflect on their work, what they learned, what strategies they tried, and what helped them succeed. So I'm going to pause there before going on to the next one.